Falcon Northwest has got to be the best job I've ever had. I've mentioned the benefits before, but I just can't get over it. We have a pinball machine in our break room, 2 arcade machines that emulate over 200 games, a computer to watch pretty much anything as we eat. We get free pizza from Kaleidoscope every Wednesday. I get to build computers every day. I work around the newest technology before even the average consumer can get their hands on it, and not only do I get discounts on computer hardware, but sometimes it's straight up free. Of course, there are negatives to everything, but compared to Walmart and Fred Meyer and that window washing job I had back in high school, this is easily the best job I've ever had. But as great as the benefits are, it's the stories that come from Falcon that really put a cherry on top. And I'm gonna tell those stories today. The first story happened when I was fairly new. I'd been working there for about 7 weeks, and I worked next to a guy named Brett. We call him Lunchbox because he drives a Kia Soul, which looks like a lunchbox on wheels. He's also a bit on the hefty side, so the name is fitting. Now, don't get upset at me, that's the nickname he gave himself, but one day he was talking about how much he wanted to build himself a new computer. Apparently his had totally died on him, and he was ready to upgrade. We asked him what he was going to do without a computer, and he started talking about how he had a PlayStation 4 and was enjoying the games that he had. He started talking about how much he enjoyed the PlayStation 4's games, and how he had forgotten how much he liked them. Now, I was face down on my computer that I was building, but I was listening, and I said, "Hey, nothing wrong with that." He pauses, and after about 2 seconds says, "That's not what Bulletbarry would say." That's when I looked back at him and said, "Bulletbarry isn't an elitist." Now, he was taken back by that. "You know you're Bulletbarry, right?" he asked, and I started laughing. See, at this time, I only had about 3,000 subscribers, and I had no idea Brett watched my channel, but it cracked me up because when he did reply like that, I was thinking of Bulletbarry as the YouTube channel I knew about. I mean, yes, it is me, but it was just such a strange worlds colliding thing, and it all just hit me at once. Speaking of Brett, though, I do have to tell this story. At work, I'm known as the sadist. I never thought that this was strange, but I laugh at people when they hurt themselves. Not when it's serious, but let me tell you this story. So, Brett was working next to me as he did, and all of a sudden we hear a loud bang followed by some really loud cussing. I look over and instantly start laughing. Brett had bumped his knee up against the side of the desk. Now, these desks have sharp corners and they're made of wood. Brett had apparently hit himself so hard and he was really in a lot of pain. And I'm laughing very loudly. Now, this was the first time this happened and everyone was calling me a bad person for that, but every time someone hurts themselves, I laugh. And I don't just laugh, I'm rolling on the floor as though them hurting themselves is the funniest thing I've ever witnessed. I don't want people to hurt themselves, and I don't know why that's my first reaction, but it cracks me up. So, as you've probably been able to tell if you've seen the first Falcon Tales, my coworkers are a bit strange, but a lot of them have some very weird outlooks as well. For example, the other day, Tim asked me what kind of older women I'm into. I thought the question was weird, but I said this: "I like my cougars to be around early to late 30s. He responds, "No, that's not a cougar, that's a puma." He then goes through the Wildcats and their respective age groups, which is stupid and overcomplicates things. Anyway, that's just an example. The reason I bring this up is because these may be weird outlooks, but if you saw the first Falcon Tales, you may remember that I say some pretty interesting things by accident. Well, the other day, a coworker of ours named Mike was talking about how he hates when it gets warm in the building because he develops bat wings. Bat wings? What the hell? He turns around, looks up at me, and says, "Bat wings are when each side of your ball sack gets stuck to the inside of your legs." Now, I didn't need to know that crap, and I said, "Mike, what the hell?" Everyone starts laughing and asks what the big deal is. I start explaining that to me, bat wings are simply a bat's wings. Mike tells me that I better get used to the different definitions when I said, well, that's stupid, that I have Tim trying to force me to learn about the differences between a cougar and a puma when I don't care, and then you're shoving your bat wings down my throat. Yeah, that conversation was over. You're gonna have to forgive me if these don't segue well. It's kinda hard to tell a collaboration of stories that happen over a period of several months and try to keep them consistent, but this next story happened a few weeks ago. With a name like Barry, you can expect every nickname ever. I was the kid in school that every individual had a personal nickname for. Blueberry, Raspberry, Barry Bonds, Barry Allen, The Flash, but most of my nicknames consisted of the fruit. Well, Evan asked me, if you were a particular kind of berry, which one would you be? Now, I sat and thought about that for a while when Rasan spoke up. See, if I were you, I would say blackberry because they aren't as sweet. They're covered in thorns, it's difficult to pick them because they're a fruit that fights back. They're resilient as in the bush they grow on never dies, and overall, they're the manliest of the berry family. Now, I was going to say something like, wow, Rasan, thank you, but before I even could, he followed up with, being that they are so hardcore though, they're practically nothing like you as you're not manly at all, but that's the one I would choose. Oh. Gee. Thanks, man. I did get Rasan pretty good the other day, though. So every now and then, Rasan and I will go out to In-N-Out Burger or some burrito joint to get some food. Well, I was driving into town with him, and as a joke, I said, "Hey, Rasan, watch this." I moved my hand in front of my car's radio, and as I did that, the station changed. He started freaking out. "Wait, what? How did you do that?" I did it again, and he was like, "Whoa, where's the sensor?" I laughed and replied, "I have no idea, but I found out I could do that yesterday on my way home." Now here's what was really going on. I have buttons on the back of my steering wheel. If I press them, they change the radio station. All I had to do was motion my hand and press the button at the right time, and I even waited until he would wave his hand around to press it too, just so he thought it was true. I let him think my car could do this for a whole day. The next day, he and I went out to lunch, but Mike came with us. As soon as Rasan got into the car, he started waving his hand in front of my radio like an idiot, and nothing was happening. Mike looked at him as though he was retarded, and Rasan looked over at me like, "What am I doing wrong?" I smiled and said, "Oh, I figured out why it doesn't work sometimes," and I clicked the button on the back of my steering wheel as loud as I possibly could. The look on his face, this guy sank. He was so annoyed that he believed me, and when we go out to lunch now, I always flick my hand in front of the radio station and pretend I'm changing the channel, just to mess with him. So I haven't told you much about Jarrett. Jarrett cracks me up because he just says it like it is, and he has the most nonchalant personality I've ever seen. For instance, my first week there, Evan was talking about why Avatar was so dumb. He said things like, "It's just a movie about tall blue people who are like Native Americans that have sex with their hair. The movie is a complete waste of time, but people watch it and like it because their minds are just made to accept the crap Hollywood gives us." So he's ranting along about this when he looks over at Jarrett and says, "Seriously, what do you think?" This is when Jarrett replies, "I think you're an idiot. You should have stopped talking a long time ago." I lost it. This guy is the most nonchalant person I've ever met. Well, the other day he had pink eye, and he was not feeling well. I used to get pink eye all the time, and it's awful, and I cannot believe he came into work. Anyway, this guy comes in and notices Jarrett has pink eye. Now, this guy's the kind of guy who goes to the gym every day, wears tight shirts, stuff like that. I don't want to say jock type, but think kind of like that. Anyway, he starts picking on Jarrett. "Hey, nice eye. You look like you got punched. You're all swollen, man." Jarrett, not taking his attention away from his build, says, "Oh, yeah, it sucks. Nice nipples." Maybe that one's more of a you had to be there story, but I just had to tell one about Jarrett. I wish I could mimic his mannerisms because they crack me up. Even when he says something he's excited about, it's still a dumbed down excitement and it cracks me up every time. Definitely one of my favorite people at Falcon. Okay, so let's talk about my blunders. I've been known to say some really regrettable things, and I don't know how it happens, but it's absolutely awful. Well, the other day we went and got a burger from this place called Jasper's. Now, the burgers are quite large, but the to-go boxes they give you are just big enough to fit the burgers. Well, I open my to-go box and I'm sitting there in the break room and the burger is just squeezed in there. And this burger is extremely juicy. Whatever sauces they use, they're watery, so I was trying hard not to make a mess of myself. I'm sitting there struggling for about 20 seconds trying to remove the burger from the to-go box when I got fed up with it and for whatever reason screamed out, "Ah, come into my mouth!" Yeah, everyone was in the break room, of course they were, and if you can believe it, that's not the gayest thing I've ever said. So, Rasan and I are pretty good friends. A few months ago, he invited me over to his house to play some Isaac. Now, if you know the game Binding of Isaac, it's a very messed up game. Suggestive on many different levels, depressing, blasphemous, and I love the game. Well, there's an item called Heart, and essentially, it's a health up, but it places a heart on your character, but because the Isaac sprite is so small, it looks like he just has a set of red balls on his chin, and everyone makes that connection. Well, Rasan and I were playing the game. He was Isaac, and I was the little multiplayer baby. He gets the heart item I spoke of before, and we're trying to make our way through the game, but we have a pretty unfortunate run, so I said, "You know, man, it kinda sucks. We have no damage at all. I think we're both at starting damage. I don't think we're gonna make it through this one." He shrugs and says, "Yeah, probably not, but at least I have these balls on my chin." I replied with, "Yeah, I'm a little jealous actually. I wish I had your balls on my chin." He dropped his controller and walked away. And the last one happened at a little In-N-Out shop called the OK Market. We went in there to get some sodas. This little market has 44-ounce sodas for $1, so when we order food, we normally skip the drinks and buy them there. Well, we go in and get drinks, and Rasan and I are waiting by the exit. You know those little sticker machines that you can put 50 cents into and it gives you like a tramp stamp? Well, as we were waiting for Mike, we were looking at them, and Rasan pointed out to the Hello Kitty and Glamour Girls ones. As a joke, he said, "I want that one." I started laughing and said, "Oh yeah, I'd stick that right on my tush." Now, I didn't know tush was such a girly word, but it embarrassed Rasan to even be around me. Didn't help that some random dude was sitting on the other side of the door staring at me now. Pro tip, if you want to be known as a manly man, don't say tush in public. We have a few running jokes at work that are brought up a lot. For example, do you know what a prolapse is? I know this is going to sound awful, but a prolapse is when a person's butthole literally falls out and has to be put back in. Well, at work, we came up with something called a brolapse, so that if this ever happens in front of someone who's a real bro, they would be the truest friend and fist it back up into you. I know. Here's another one. Our boss, for whatever reason, likes country music, so he puts it on. Well, country music is suggestive as hell. They give off the rapiest vibes, more so than any other music, but I've never heard a song so blatant about it than a song called My Girl Loves to Fish. Well, I mentioned the song was extremely rapey when a guy named Brian says, "What? No, it isn't. This song is innocent. He's just talking about how his girl enjoys fishing." I looked at him and replied, "Brian, he rhymed fish with duck." Now, if you haven't heard the song, it goes a little something like this. I had everything we needed in the bed of my truck. Turns out my baby loves to fish. Well, after that, almost every time we're about to say the profaned F word, we replace it with fish. It was mostly just to give Brian a wake-up call to show him that his beloved country music was all about sex, but it ended up turning into an insult. Man, do you even know how to fish? Here's one that Tim does all the time. We have conversations a lot about pretty controversial things, and sometimes we get a bit passionate. Well, when I get passionate about certain topics, Tim normally screams out, "Barry, you're talking in your YouTube voice again." Generally, this makes me laugh, but the other day I said, "So what? It's my voice. I can speak however I want to." To which he replies, "Yeah, but on YouTube, I can hit the little X on the top right corner. Here, I just have to deal with it." Jerk. There's one guy out in receiving who cracked us all up once. He claimed that anyone who had ever taken a drink of alcohol, even just once, was from that point forward a recovering alcoholic. It was funny because a buddy of mine was there and he's Mormon. He spoke up and said, "Oh yeah, totally. There was a time I accidentally took a sip of rum and coke. I'm totally a recovering alcoholic now." Everyone started laughing, but the guy who initially said it was full on serious and said, "Exactly." Every now and then we joke with one another about how we're all recovering alcoholics. So I sit next to this guy named Tim. Well, Tim has been working at Falcon almost since it opened. Because of this, he feels a bit entitled to certain things, one of which being part of my desk. Apparently it wasn't my desk because it was Tim's first. Well, one day I got fed up and moved his monitor, which was on my desk. He moved it right back and told me not to touch his stuff. I raged at him and said, "Tim, you're on my desk." He started to speak when I said, "Look over there, Tim. Do you see Rasan's desk? Do you see how Timothy doesn't have a single thing on Rasan's desk, even though they're right next to each other?" He starts to say, "Well, Barry, that's different. See, Tim, look, what you're doing on my desk is rude. I know you think it's yours, but it's not anymore. Look back at them. That's courtesy. Look at what you're doing. You're being a prick. This is prickacy." He kept trying to speak, and every time he did, I just said, "Prickacy." And not only did I get my desk back, but every now and then the word prickacy floats around the room. This one day, Evan was trying to offer something to me, but he was trying to do it in a sexual way. He totally messed up and said, "Barry, do you want to take it or receive it?" "Wait, what?" I replied. "Take it or receive it, Barry, come on." "Dude, that's the same thing." "No, it's not." "Yes, it absolutely is." He kept arguing with me, so I said, "Evan, if I take something the gay way and receive something the gay way, I still end up with the thing." Every so often now, when someone asks for something like a screwdriver, we ask if they want to take it or receive it. And the last thing we say every so often is something that, again, Evan made up. You may notice a pattern. He brings up homosexuality a lot, but the topic was about how far you could go with another man without it being gay. His end-all line was, "I'll just have heterosexual sex with a man." Every so often, someone will scream out, "Heterosex with dudes." Speaking of heterosex with men, there's this guy named Timothy. Now, I know that intro was strange, but nobody at Falcon is actually gay. However, Timothy does say and do some pretty strange things sometimes. Like the other day, he walks up to me and says, "I just got a berry-flavored vape pen so I can suck you anytime I want." Yeah, that was odd, but it was what he did a few months ago that really caught me off guard. Someone had brought in some Dr. Pepper-flavored licorice. I was intrigued, so I tried some. I told Timothy that they were really good and he should try one as well. I looked back at my build and then I went to ask him what he thought of them when I turned around and see him shoving the whole Twizzler down his throat. He starts laughing and pulls it back out and then looks at me and says, "I have no gag reflex." What the hell, dude? So I talked a little bit about Tim. Tim can be kind of a prick. See, there are two Tims at Falcon. Timothy, who is younger than myself, and Tim, who is much older than myself and can be a bit of a pain sometimes. I call him Prick Tim when he deserves it, but the other day I really messed with him. See, we all have electric drills that we use to build computers. Being that I build computers every day, I use mine a lot. And it had been wearing out for quite some time. not working properly, breaking down. Well, the company had just bought Tim a new drill. Well, he's sitting next to me and he engages me in conversation. He starts talking about how he respects everyone else's stuff and how he would never touch anyone's things because he knows how much it would bother him. He's almost lecturing me, so I reply, yeah, me too, just so I can go back to work. Well, my drill starts acting up, and I smile a very evil smile. He walks away from his desk, and I use that opportunity to swap drills with him. I look at his drill, and his initials are marked in silver Sharpie. The guy's extremely territorial. He sits back down, and right in front of him, I take alcohol and wipe his initials off the drill. Somehow, he doesn't see a thing. I then take a Sharpie and write my initials where his used to be and use the drill for the rest of the day. Now, around lunchtime, I told everyone what I had done and told them not to say a thing. The next day, I had the day off. I come into work the day after that, and Tim is freaking out all morning about how he'd been searching an entire day for his drill, asking if I had seen it. Apparently, no one told him that I took it. I started laughing and told him that, as a second checker, he shouldn't be worried about a drill, but he insists. I just go back to work and I ignore him. Periodically, he gets up and searches for the drill, freaks out about it, and then sits back down, which was extremely entertaining. Now, this part actually scared me. He gets up, walks over to me and says, "You know what, Barry? I bet someone took my drill. I bet they wiped off my initials and is using it right now. Wouldn't be hard to use alcohol and just wipe it off." I started dying. I thought he had caught me, but right after he said that, he walked away and sat back down. About 30 minutes pass and he asks, "Barry, can I use your drill for a second?" I hand it over to him and jokingly he says, "Hey, this one feels nice. I wonder if maybe this is my drill." I looked at him with a very evil smile and said, "It is your drill, Tim." He laughs and brushes it off, to which I say, "Tim, that's your drill. I wiped your initials off it and put mine on there. Look, you can still see yours underneath." He started freaking out. I thought it specifically wasn't you because of that conversation we had the other day about not messing with other people's things. Tim, it was because of that conversation that I stole your drill. You can have it back any time. To this day, I still use his drill. So I said earlier that I like to mess with people. Well, one day Rasan was asking where I'd like to go for lunch. I told him that I wanted to go to In-N-Out Burger. He kind of put his head down and said, "Yeah, maybe." I looked at him and said, "Okay, how about this? If we go to In-N-Out, I will buy you your burger." He perks his head up and says, "Sure. One condition though, Rasan, you have to buy your fry and drink." Wait, what? Why? I started laughing. Now I was messing around, but he kept freaking out about it. "Barry, this is BS. This is such a messed up thing to do." So it became a real condition. We get to In-N-Out and Rasan walks up and orders, "I'd like a fry and drink, please." The girl across the counter says, "No burger, sir?" I walk up to the girl next to the one he's talking to and order my burger and ask, "Okay, Rasan, what do you want?" He leans over and orders his burger from the girl who is serving me. All the while, the other girl looks so betrayed, so sad, like, "Am I not good enough? Can you not order a burger from me?" He felt so guilty for doing that, and every time I say, "Hey, Rasan, want to go to In-N-Out? I'll buy your burger," he screams, "No." Speaking of Rasan, the other day, he, Mike, Jarrett, and I went to a restaurant for lunch called Octavio's. It was fantastic. The service was great, the food was amazing, but the waiter kept making jokes about how I was the new guy, and everyone at the table was telling the same joke. Now, the reason this annoys me is because I was hired, then Brett was hired, and then Rasan. If anyone is the new guy, it's one of them, but no. To the group, I'm the new guy, and I cannot understand why. But the waiter thought it was hilarious. Maybe it's because I have such a young face? Anyway, we're in the car driving back home, and Mike makes a joke at me. "That waiter really seemed to like you, new guy." "Ugh, that really annoys me, man," I replied. Mike laughs and asks, "Why? You are the new guy." This is when I said, "No, I'm not the new guy. Brett and Rasan are. If I was a wet rag who was left out to dry, Rasan is still wetter than I am." The whole car lost it. Now, I need to give you a fair warning for this last story. This story is the worst story I've ever heard, and it's kind of depressing knowing that at 22 years of age, I've heard the worst thing I've ever heard, and nothing will ever top it. You know when someone tells you a story and starts off with a disclaimer like, "This is the worst thing you'll ever hear"? Well, I start off with that every single time I tell this story, and even to my brother, the guy whom I could say, "Dev, I just won $1 billion," would say, "Cool." Even he said, "Okay, that disclaimer wasn't long enough." If you cannot deal with sad stories, you don't like feeling disgusted and depressed at the same time, let the video end. If you feel brave, then welcome to the last story. Oh, also, this story is rated R, so if you're young and you have a full life ahead of you, turn back and don't proceed until you're older. So we got a new guy out in receiving named Matt, and from day one, he was a bit strange. He was kind of in your face a bit. He was really close quartersy, and he liked to tell some really weird stories. Well, Timothy and Rasan go out to smoke when Matt runs out there to go with them. He says this: "Hey guys, my buddy told me this hilarious story. It just happened to him. You're gonna love it." This is how he tells the story. "So a friend of mine was house sitting while his parents were gone. He decided to invite his girlfriend over, and they started going at it on the couch. Well, they decided to try anal, and the boyfriend pulled out a bit too fast. The girl lost all control over her bowels, and by the time it was all over, the couch was covered in her crap. They tried to clean it up as best they could, but the couch was ruined. The parents come home after their trip was over and asked what the hell happened to their couch. Their son tells them that it was the dog that did it, and that he tried his best to clean it up. The parents said the dog was old enough to know better, and that this was unacceptable. They put the dog down. They killed their dog for something it didn't do. It was innocent. I would have just told the truth, or hell, said it was me. Put me down. The thing that really gets me about this, and this part is going to kill you, is I keep imagining the dog laying down at the vet's table wondering what is going on, wondering what it did wrong. Seriously, if that story doesn't depress you, you're not a human being, and I'm sorry, but I had to tell it. It's kind of like therapy. I'm able to tell these stories and relieve my stress this way. If you're scarred for life, all I can say is I tried to warn you. Seriously though, Falcon Northwest is full of some really strange people and even stranger events. But as bad as it can get, it's still the best job I've ever had.